Hello, my name is Andre Ward, and I'm the Associate Vice President of the David Rothenberg Center for Public Policy at the Fortune Society. Welcome to Both Sides of the Bars, a discussion-driven show that examines the legal system from various perspectives, including people most impacted by the system. We discuss critical questions about how the current system works, its intersections with social justice, and we highlight the efforts of everyone that are being involved. We ask you, the viewers, to spread the word about both sides of the bars by sharing your comments on Twitter at the Fortune SOC. Today's show is entitled The Arts and Advocacy, Why They Are So Important to the Criminal Legal System Reform. When we think about the arts, right, the creative arts in particular, drawing, painting, acting, writing, music, and more, are becoming a prime tool for the calling for an end to mass incarceration in the United States, the promoting of alternatives to incarceration, and the supporting of successful reentry after imprisonment. In this episode, we'll be talking with some artists and those who are deeply involved in advocacy work, ending mass incarceration through the arts. And that would be with Jamie Maleszka, who is the Director of Creative Arts at the Manhattan-based The Fortune Society, she'll be discussing the organization's writing and storytelling workshops. And she'll be joined by three artists. That's Russell Craig, Jenny Polak, and Laura Cerón Melo, who use their talents to amplify demands for social justice and community resistance to the prison industrial complex. Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone. Jamie and Russell, Jenny, and Lauren, how are you each feeling today?
We're doing well. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Well, Thank you so much for joining. And we'll get right to it, right, Jamie? You have been working at the Fortune Society for several years now and leading the advocacy and arts work, right? Combination together, right? And so talk to us about some of that work, and then we'll jump into talking with a little bit with Russell, Jenny, and Lauren about the work that they're doing.
Sure, absolutely. Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having us and for highlighting arts as advocacy. So I am lucky enough to serve as the Director of Creative Arts at Fortune Society. And it is basically our general approach that certainly, while we deeply believe in the healing and transformative capacities of creative expression, creativity, imagination, we deeply, equally believe that any type of artistic expression in and of itself is advocacy, whether it's the individual artist sort of stating their claim, their vision, their point of view, or certainly, which you'll see with a lot of Fortune artists and Fortune community members, them directly imagining more just collective futures through their work, processing experiences that they have had. And so we do this through a myriad of ways. Certainly we have workshops and opportunities to perform and amplify, be it on the page, in performance, being published, on stage. We do this through a variety of ways. But what I'm excited about in conversation with these incredible artists that are here, Laura, Russell, and Jenny have certainly their own art practices that, certainly they'll speak to, that weave in advocacy as a part of their work. But we are lucky enough to be officially a part of an incredible opportunity here in New York State called Creatives Rebuild New York. Their artist employment program is a 2-year program where artists embed with community-based organizations. Fortune Society was lucky enough to be one of 98 organizations that were selected across New York State. So due to their incredible generosity and support and deep belief in artists as being not only just vital to a solid economy, but imperative to New York State's vitality. We were a part of this. So to have each of these artists in bed with us for the next 2 years, this is, we talk about arts as advocacy, it literally, the sky's the limit. With their expertise, the opportunities that it already has and will create for our community members. We lit many candles for this opportunity, and to be able to have this kind of sustained relationship and expertise and community building is imperative. So I'm excited. I hope we get to come back and chat with you, Andre, at the end of 2 years to talk about all the growth.
No, absolutely. I want to transition now too, because we have, like you said, Jamie, so other amazing artists who joined you, right, who are part of the Arts as Advocacy work. And I want to circle to Russell. Russell, I know that you're an artist, right? You paint, right? And then you're from Philly, right? And so talk to us about, like, how do you use your gift as a painter, right, to be involved in advocacy work?
Well, first, I'd like to start with the fact that I use art to change my life. I'm formerly incarcerated, and it wasn't easy, but it was all about really just like putting all my efforts and really believing that art, because I really believed that art would change things, and it did. So when I was in Philadelphia, I did some work with the Guild program of Mirror Arts in Philadelphia with formerly incarcerated youth from the ages of 18 and 24. Get the opportunity to participate in art workshops and other workshops that I wasn't the instructor of, but things like that, but just being a part of that, gave me some experience. So it's an honor to be transitioning to New York, where I'm based now. I'm in Brooklyn, but I'm in New York. So working with Fortune Society, I'm looking forward to trying to inspire someone in the New York area.
And what are some of the things that you actually paint, Russell?
I paint many things. I was doing a lot of portraits, but my work deals with a lot with social injustice, the prison system, and things like that, and my experiences and stuff like that. But also, I work with communities with making murals, and I wanted to have mural workshops with Fortune Society. Is like one of the things that I want to kick off with working with Fortune.
And speaking of painting, right, I want to transition now to Laura. Laura is almost like a technological painter, right? In that if there's a thing, right? She's a technological painter, right? In that, like, she is a bicultural graphic and social designer, right? And talk about that work, Laura, and how incredibly important that is relative to advocacy work, empowering people, etc.
Yeah, so my background is more in design, and my let's say like professional career has been more in doing visual design. So using a lot of my skills via like using a computer. But I've also used like a lot of my hands to raise my voice and the voice of others when it comes to like social injustices. And I feel like as a designer and also as an artist and someone who just cares about humans in general, that art is a vehicle to talk to people who might not understand issues and make them accessible and invite people in to care and connect, like build bridges between different points of view. And I also feel like art. I don't remember whose quote is this, but it says something about the role of art is to make revolution irresistible. So I feel like us as artists and as creative people have that gift of making things look beautiful and appealing, and also very important, like putting things up in people's faces and making them care, and so that is how we drive like social change, right? Because that is how any major social movement and any major like social rights gain has happened, like pushing back. And art has always been part of the mix of like pushing for a more just and fair society everywhere.
Absolutely. When you think about that, Laura, too, there's one author I read so many years ago that used the term theatrics of resistance, right? And this notion of using theatrics in whatever that art form is, it could be acting, it could be writing, it could be painting, as a means to resist oppressive situations and to change conditions. So it's certainly jives with what you're talking about, which makes me want to transition now to Jenny. Like, Jenny, I know that you do this this site and community responsive artwork, and talk to us about what that is and how does that look and how does that look in the world?
Well, a good example is the work that I did at Socrates Sculpture Park here in Long Island City. There's an amazing sculpture park, and it gives opportunities to artists to come and make a large-scale work. And that's how I met Jamie and the Fortune Society, because my piece that I began to make just at the beginning of the pandemic, which is called Offshore, was a very large sculpture, kind of in the form of a jetty that projected a kind of small mini prison cage over the water of the East River. And it was in direct reference to Rikers. And I designed the piece so that people came to look at it, would have to look out over the water, kind of towards Gracie Mansion, which is where that part of the waterfront looks, through a prison cage. When I designed it, I knew that I wanted to kind of populate it with the real experiences of people who'd been through incarceration and maybe Rikers specifically, and local people. So I reached out to local organizations that are working with people who have experienced prison and jail, and asked them if they would like to be involved. And so this in the course of the several months that the work was on view, the writing from the writers at the Fortune Society was incorporated into the work in the form of these pennant flags, which I attached to the fence. So the fence became completely kind of obliterated with these brightly colored flags with messages written by the people themselves, so that their words came to a wider public, and it was a platform for those experiences to be communicated.
Yeah, Jen, I know you're fading just a little bit. I don't know if the door may be open or something, but I think it's powerful, right? That kind of expression, right, of art as advocacy to portray like what's happening on Rikers Island here in New York City in particular is really, really important. And Jamie, I want to turn back to you, because I know that the work that you're leading at Fortune in the arts as advocacy work is impacting many people. And you've done several things to demonstrate the power and impact of that. And talk about some of those things. I know you have MoMA and some other things you've been doing, and how might that be replicated throughout the country?
Sure. Well, one, I would say that we are lucky enough to obviously be doing this specific work in New York City, and certainly there are a wealth of resources and major art institutions, artists like these incredible folks, small grassroots organizations that are generous and willing to form coalition and to do this work together. Certainly, MoMA PS1 is at the top of that list. We were able to do an on-site exhibition in the fall of last year.
And what is MoMA, Jamie? What is MoMA?
It is I think it's safe to say, maybe you all can correct me in saying either contemporary or modern. What would be the actual choice in terms of time period? Modern?
Modern.
Okay, yeah. So a modern.
Modern, but their choice of art is contemporary.
Yeah, more experimental artwork that is related to the Museum of Modern Art, but this is the Long Island City, Queens-based outpost. It is an international art museum. That's the quick explanation. And it was, for the first time, Fortune community members and Fortune artists were able to share their work and be considered within that context with an international audience. So certainly beyond New York City, certainly beyond the state, and certainly beyond the nation. It was the first time that we were able to share this kind of work. And we are very much so interested that certainly while aesthetics are important, that there also is an activation for audience and visitors that are coming into contact with our artists' work. And so it was actually Laura worked with our arts community to create a zine that, again, while exquisite,
And what is the zine,
to look
Jamie,
at.
for
Oh,
us, for
Laura, do you
unlearned
want
folk?
to pitch? Do you want to take that question?
So the zine is about the language that we use to refer to people who have gone through the experience of incarceration and just like been marginalized by the prison system, basically. So I did a series of workshops to work with community members from the Fortune Society to ask them, like, how do you want to be talked about? How do you identify? What are the words that you feel that represent you as a human being, right? Because just the experience of going through incarceration is one of dehumanizing you, and it puts you a label, and you come out with like a lot of dehumanizing, stigmatizing labels like prisoner, ex-con, parolee, all of these things that are terrible. So it was an effort, and it is an effort of educating people on how to use humanizing language when we are talking about people who have been impacted by the criminal justice system.
Mm-hmm.
Using the words of the people who have been impacted by it. So it's, like in that experience, it was just like, just call me by my name,
Exactly. And so tell me some more, Jamie, too, right? I mean, some more of the actions that you're all involved in. I understand there's some other stuff, not just the work that you do with the art installations, the work that Laura just referenced around the language changing, but there's also some music that's involved, right, in your work, right, too. So talk a little bit about that. Didn't want to get to you, Russell, to talk a little bit more about your arts work, like what's happening now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so certainly, yes. So we are lucky enough to have a really robust arts program. We, up until recently, referred to us as being tiny but mighty, but thanks to these incredible human beings, we are certainly growing. Our music program is a huge part of that. We have an on-site studio where folks are able to record and then amplify their own work. We really seize every opportunity to not only perform and share work and share storytelling and experiences here within, the four walls of the agency and our other locations, but to be out and in community in New York and beyond. And so we seize every opportunity to perform. So we've had, even most recently, we had our 9th annual Arts Festival. Jenny referenced Socrates Sculpture Park, which is on the waterfront in Long Island City. We've done things, as you mentioned, with MoMA PS1. It's actually thanks to Russell had his first New York solo show at Malin Gallery. And in April for National Poetry Month, we were able to host a poetry reading, which, it saw more than 25 poets and commentators performing. We had an audience of, I would say, upwards of 80 people. So this is, we carry the message. The artists love to say that they are, full-time artists and full-time ambassadors. We carry the message and understand that within each person and each story contains multitudes, and that our aim is to upend the narratives that surround people with histories of incarceration, their family members. We want to make sure that it is the folks and it's the artists, as so often as Laura mentioned earlier, that lead the way and regarding any social movement, that Fortune artists have the support, the resources to be able to do that. Specifically, like someone like Russell, other artists like Jared Owens, that these are individuals that are at the forefront of their craft, and that they are a living example to any of our community members that it is possible that they too can be in the Brooklyn Museum. They too can be on an international and national stage, and be at the forefront of not only art as advocacy, but art in the art world, period.
Got it. And Russell, right, as someone who is a painter that happens to be formerly incarcerated, and I'm intentionally saying that, right, because you're a painter first, right, who happens to be formerly incarcerated, not a formerly incarcerated painter. So as a painter, right, a self-taught one at that, right, who's formerly incarcerated, what did that feel like, right? You were presenting your stuff in a place that's significant. How did that make you feel, one? And number two, what does that communicate to you in your effort to begin to inspire others to do the same thing?
Well, I first say I appreciate for you to recognize me as an artist, because that's what I'm working towards, to be viewed as an artist in more people's eye, instead of like coming from prison, because that's like, oh, the prison guy, the prison artist, like, that label, is kind of hard to shake, that stigma. But I appreciate that. But it don't bother me too much. I would say, like, with my art, it started well, as a kid, I was like a foster kid and stuff like that, way in the beginning. And then once I winded up in the prison system, I started to realize like that I needed to change things around. So I put like all my beliefs in that I could, take art and change my life and exit the prison system and never return. So I've been doing that successfully for like the last 9 years now. So not only do I like paint a thing, and then a lot of my paintings has to do with like the system, my experience and things like that, but also being like a living example. You had asked like, what am I up to now? Like right now I'm at Aspen, Colorado, have an art exhibit with Mylan Gallery. We have a gallery in Manhattan, but then also out here in Aspen. Got to show all my work deals with my prison experience and others that I know that went through this system. I donated a piece to the Aspen Museum that was auctioned off, and it was entitled "Nobody Was There," because when I was going through the prison system, nobody was there. But what don't kill you make you stronger. And after that, when I leave Aspen on the 12th and come back to New York, my focus will be on working on a piece that will be in the Christie's auction, top auction, and then the proceedings will go to Right of Return. I'm the co-founder of Right of Return, where we give formerly incarcerated artists grant $20,000, and Mylan Foundation donated money. So we're looking to give $50,000 to about 7 artists around the country that's formerly incarcerated. We've been doing it for 4 years, and those are just examples of like what the art can do, raise other people up, use myself in its example, and we just gonna keep doing more and more and more. So when I get back, I can't wait to do the work that I got planned to do with the Fortune Society, and also make that work for Christie's.
Absolutely. Love it that obviously you've created this organization, the work that you're doing there with artists that are formerly incarcerated. Can't stress enough, right? Artists first who are formerly incarcerated, right? And formerly incarcerated, I can't stress it enough, because your creativity leads, not the label, right? That's associated, right, with your experience. And so want to kind of close out, right? We never have enough time, folks, right? But we certainly will have, to Jamie's point earlier, we'll have you all back, right, to give us a 2-year kind of like review, right, and what happened, how things are going, etc. I want to just say, add, or rather ask Laura, like some things that you like to communicate, right? We are national, right, as on both sides of the bars. What would you like to share with our viewers around the importance of arts as advocacy in like a minute?
Wait, is that for me?
Yes.
Anyone think it is?
That's for you, Laura. I know a minute is never enough.
We have to train.
We have to train, so sorry.
Okay, so we'll go to you, Jamie, right? Sure. In a minute, right? What would you like to communicate to our viewers, right, around arts as advocacy and its importance? And how can people get in contact with you?
Okay, so I'll do 2 of those things. One, I just want to say, in my understanding in my own personal journey, that certainly arts is healing, but it's also that art is possibilities. And so I think that is when we talk about advocacy and sort of not even necessarily reimagining, but imagining different and more humane ways to show up for each other. I think it's imperative, and I think that certainly it gets at the essence of being human quicker than certainly any other mode that I know of. I also, to your second point, want to say that if folks are interested certainly in just learning more about the work that we're doing here at Fortune, there are countless organizations across the country that are doing incredible work using art as the vehicle to transform the criminal legal system, but beyond that, thinking beyond punitive means and showing up for communities. So if other organizations want to learn more about the model that we're using, we certainly would love to learn more from them. Certainly you can visit Fortune's general website, but we also, another thing that Laura created, our own website called Art Portal. So you can visit that at fortuneartportal.org.
Can you repeat that, Jamie?
Reference to is also available there.
Can you repeat that, the website again?
Oh, sure. fortuneartportal.org.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And
Sure.
so Laura, we have maybe like 30 seconds or so. Laura and Jenny, we can split this minute, 30 seconds apiece. What would you like to communicate to our viewers about the importance of arts as advocacy? All speak up at once.
Okay. So art gets through to it has the opportunity to communicate to a really broad audience. So we want to be in conversation with many people out there about the issues that people who are formerly incarcerated face. And we want to inspire empathy and action.
Thank you. Laura?
I want to say art and advocacy. Art is just life-giving, and I feel it's one of the most effective vehicles to help people get embodied. And when we are in our bodies and we own our experience, we can free ourselves and help others do the same. So that is advocacy, and that is revolution, and that is how we change.
Laura, Jenny, Jamie, and Russell, thank you so much for joining us today on both sides of the bars. We really appreciate it. And again, we will have you back on for an update on what has happened based on the important and incredible work that each of you are doing. And we want to thank you as the viewers, as always, for joining us here on both sides of the bars. In the meantime, on behalf of the Fortune Society, we thank you so much for tuning in today and for really listening to this important discussion. If you're interested in finding out more about the Fortune Society, please check us out on the web at www.fortunesociety.org. That's www.fortunesociety.org. Or you can find us on Facebook by typing in the Fortune Society. My name is Andre Ward, and as always, I appreciate you for joining us here as we take a critical look at both sides of the bars.